Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Zzzax of Live podcast, a Marvel podcast from Laughing Place. I'm Mike Mack. Kyle Burbank is with me, but not with me this time.
A little different, yeah.
Yeah.
From my third location in 3 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Loki season 2 segment of this podcast has really just been all over the place, and it's going to be even more so this week's episode, as I will explain in just a little bit here. But what you've been up to, Kyle? How's it going? Does it feel nice to be home now?
I'm not home. It feels good to to not be on the other side of the world or in Florida.
Yeah, that's gotta be. I mean, like you said, just been running all over the place, doing just everything imaginable for Laughing Place, right?
I mean, this isn't for Laughing Place currently, but yes, in general. And actually, I am doing something for Laughing Place on the way home. We are now diverting to Kansas City for a minute so I can cover something. So there you go.
There's nothing on the way that would be. Where are you going? Okay, yeah. That.
I mean, it's not on the way, but it works out somehow.
the general direction for your travels there.
General direction, and yeah, Doobie's pointing out that I said for a minute, and he does not like that.
Whoa! Spoilers for
he's just in the chat.
Yeah, speaking of the chat, we are live right now, so if you have any questions about we're gonna break down the 4th episode of Loki. We're gonna get into some Marvel news. We're gonna have a ridiculous draft as always, so you can feel free to chime in the chat there, unless you're listening after the fact. If you're just listening to this as an audio medium, you can feel free to comment. We can't hear you, but that's totally up to you. So like I said, this Loki has us time jumping and traveling the world and everything. So this episode, like the previous 2, is going to be just all over the place. We're doing things differently. We are going to get to the Loki breakdown later. We're going to get to our news later. We're going to start off with our draft.
It kind of makes sense when we get into the episode why this actually does work thematically.
Sure. And the reasoning, but beyond the theming of it working in with it, is because the guest we have joining us today, who has been on several times, is just the biggest diva we could possibly have on this. So we have to move things around just for him. I think you can guess it's the
Doobie, Hard Out Mosley.
Yeah, I'm such a diva that I need to get out in time so I can take the bus home. Diva
You do want to say, for those of you watching, Doobie's shirt provided by Roosevelt's. I will say I almost wore a Roosevelt's today too, because I wanted to give them a shout out of as of this podcast being out. Just yesterday, they dropped some of their Disney 100 collection. A lot of it's already been out for a long time now, but I couldn't help but jump on that Steamboat Willie bomber jacket. That thing is awesome. Really excited for that. So yeah, go check out Roosevelt's. They have a lot of really cool Disney stuff and a lot of Marvel stuff too. So Doobie, you are joining us for our draft this week. We don't have how much is that cameo. We'll get back into some sort of normalcy in the future, but we are going to have a draft. And Doobie, you've joined us for this type of draft a few times now. We're doing another recast. It's Halloween coming up. Today is the 27th. So we're just a few days away from Halloween. So we decided to do a recast of horror movies with MCU actors. Doobie, I see you have a question.
I do. It's more of a comment. I hate to take things on a tangent, but you mentioned Halloween, and I saw the scariest thing in the world today. Kyle and I have been a little too busy to do our morning show, so this is my only time to mention it. Have you seen the image from Snow White, the live action?
I did, yes, very briefly. Yeah, and you're right. Let's get into the conversation.
Absolutely terrifying. I really thought it was a joke when I saw it on Twitter, and then I saw, no, this is real. So anyway,
and then you saw Laughing Place tweet it, and you know that Kyle vetted it because he went to WaltDisneyCompany.com to get the image before tweeting it.
Which you still got to wonder if they've been hacked, because that image is so bad.
I don't think if they got hacked, the person would bother to make a press release on TWDC.com, as I like to go to. But
well, how long before we find out that image was created by AI?
Yesterday. Anyway, we can move on. I'm sorry.
No, one more thing I do need to point out too is, Doobie, how many times have you been on the podcast for us now? I mean, I don't know.
I have no idea.
This is episode number 78, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that at the top, but
you don't keep prison notches to.
I know whenever you run out, you ask a bunch of people and you don't get any. I know you always come back to me, so I think it's somewhere around 7 or 8.
No, this draft type specifically, I actually said this last week, and Kyle can vouch for me here. I specifically said we're doing a horror recast next week. We have to get Doobie. He's the one that does these drafts. So yeah, but I just had to point out that Doobie did let us know at the intro here that he is just now learning that we have a theme song. So
he usually shows up.
I usually come on at the end. Yeah,
that's true. You do come on at the end of the podcast, so that makes sense. And to be fair, it's really just a bit of the Facts of Life theme song. But that's how we operate here.
Can I say one more thing? I think you guys have done a show since the event already, but this is my first time broadcasting since the wedding of my very favorite person in the world. So I just want to publicly congratulate Tony Betty, give my condolences to the now Morgan Betty, and what a wonderful wedding it was. And I'm so honored to have been there.
I was going to say, you've done hundreds of broadcasts since my wedding, but that's fine.
Very good, Mac. Very good.
All right, so let's get into this horror movie recast draft. To explain it for those of you who haven't listened to the previous ones, what have we done before? We did a Christmas movie one. Did we do a rom-com one? Something like that. We've done a few. But yeah, we're going to be doing horror movies. So we don't know which movie or which characters we have to recast just yet. We are each picking a movie for another person here.
You must have done some blockbusters or something, because I got Jaws.
It was 4th of July movies. That's what it was. 4th
of July movie. There you go.
And I am picking for you again. I did consider giving you Jaws again to see if you had watched it previously.
See if I remembered what I chose the first time.
And yeah, we have to recast 4 different roles with MCU actors. So I will start us off here. I will just say, Kyle, I picked your movie, and because I know you so well, I know there is one horror movie you have seen. I am giving you Cabin in the Woods.
Great movie.
And it is a good movie, yeah. And I was talking about this with my wife yesterday. Surprise horror movie to have seen, because it's not like that's the like softest horror movie. That's kind of like mid-tier, I think.
Yeah. It wasn't my choice, but I did enjoy it. I was dragged into the theater. I don't want to say kicking and screaming, but it's not that far off. And turns out the scariest thing in that movie was the title, like popping on the screen.
Oh yeah, that jump scare right off the bat.
That is a jump scare.
Hi, Steven. Thanks.
So this is great that you gave me this movie that I've seen, but at the same time, I didn't know if we were officially going with just horror or Halloween. So now I'm in a pickle because I don't have something for Doobie that quite qualifies unless we stretch it a bit.
I think we can allow it. I think I have a guess as to what it might be too.
I have a different one for Doobie, but can I have the 4 roles? I'll tell you what 4 I would have chosen.
Yeah, so I should probably tell you the 4 roles you'll be casting for Cabin in the Woods. It's going to be Dana, who was played by Kristen Connolly, Kurt, who's of course played by Chris Hemsworth. Little caveat here: you can't cast Chris Hemsworth to play that role.
I know.
You're casting Sitterson, who's played by Richard Jenkins, and Hadley, played by Bradley Whitford.
Okay, so we are on the same page as how it doesn't really make sense because it's not the top 4 build, but those are exactly the 4 people that I chose as well. So that works out.
I'm sorry, Dana, Kurt, Hadley, and who?
Sitterson. It's the two old guys in the office, like operating the whole situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay. Oh, you didn't go with the crazy guy who brought his substances with him to. Okay.
Kyle, what movie are you giving to Doobie here?
Okay, I'm gonna see if this qualifies as a horror movie. Really stretching, but if possible, I would like Peter, Raymond, Egon, and Winston, the 4 Ghostbusters.
Oh, yeah. I think that definitely qualifies.
Right up there with Back to the Future is one of the most overrated movies of all time. But okay, I can do that. Wow. So was the top 4, the 4 Ghostbusters.
Yeah, you're recasting the Ghostbusters.
You know Sigourney Weaver's character? A little surprise.
Not a bad choice.
But which Ghostbuster was going to leave off and not get canceled? Come on.
I think we know which one. Okay, sounds good.
I'm so glad you cut me off, Kyle. Doobie, what movie do you have for me?
I am giving you easily my favorite horror movie of all time, which by pure coincidence I saw just a couple of weeks ago. And you are doing Stephen Freeling, Diane Freeling, Carol Ann, and Tangina Barrons, the ultimate Ghostbuster from Poltergeist.
Okay, yes. That is not only... Wait, so when you say you just saw it recently, do you mean for the first time?
No.
Okay.
I saw that in theaters for the first time. I just saw it again recently.
Can I say, having not seen horror movies, when I was trying to think of other options, I would get like maybe one or two people into these other movies. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, you could do Halloween. You got Lori, Michael, people. So that's where my...
You've got Michael with the mask, Michael without the mask.
I was going to go young Michael, older Michael.
No, I did. Halloween was actually the first one that came to mind too, but I wasn't sure if, again, I was picking for Kyle. Wasn't sure if you had seen it or had any idea what to cast for that. But
and we all know Jamie Lee Curtis would never be in a Marvel movie because she's 64, and no one over the age of 60 has ever appeared in a Marvel movie.
Doobie, real quick, can I have the roles again that you have me recasting for Poltergeist?
Yes, so they're the lead couple, Stephen Freeling and Diane Freeling, played by Craig T. Nelson and JoBeth Williams. And then there's Carol Ann, the little girl, Heather O'Rourke. Very small role, actually, as it turns out, but pivotal. And then the shorter person who plays the medium, or whatever you want to call her, who helps him out, the role is Tangina Barrons, played by Zelda Rubinstein. Carol Ann, of course, was played by Heather O'Rourke, who very, very tragically died shortly after Poltergeist.
Yeah, that one's gonna be that's a difficult one to cast, because I'll get into it when we get into the draft here. And then of course, Doobie, you're drafting the Ghostbusters. You know how this works. It's gonna be a snake draft. Do you want to pick first, second, or third?
I think this time I'm going to go third. And unlike last time, I am aware this time that we're picking the actors, not the characters, right?
We are picking the actors. We are recasting these roles. So they have to be actors who have been in the MCU.
Right. Which is pretty much every actor.
It is, yeah, it's most of Hollywood at this point. So yeah, that's a fair point. But it makes it a little bit easier for us. But again, we are recasting these classic movies on the fly here. So, well, the classic movies in Cabin in the Woods on the fly, not knowing what we were getting into. So, so I'm sorry, Doobie, which pick did you want to go with?
I had said third, but I'm going to change that. I'm going to go first.
You're going to go first. Okay. All right. So Doobie will be first. Kyle, I think that makes you second this week, right?
You went first last week.
Yeah. Yeah. So you will have the second pick. I will have the third pick. Which,
if you went first last week, I would go first this week.
Right. Yeah, you're going first out of the two of us.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was still stuck on Doobie doing third, because see, the problem with doing these live is that people are messaging me and I have to respond to them and then still pay attention to you, and I failed. So that's my fault. I go second. Yes, correct.
All right. So Doobie,
if we edited the show still, I would make you edit that out.
and I would not. So everything is exactly the same as it always used to be. Doobie, which Ghostbuster are you casting first? This is an interesting choice here.
So I'm going to start with Winston Zeddemore, played by Ernie Hudson, and I'm going to. I decided to go first because I want to make sure I get this actor in my film. He's one of the biggest MCU actors of all time. I think he'll be perfect in this role. If they actually remade Ghostbusters, I think they could have a lot of fun with Samuel F. Word Jackson as Ernie Hudson's character in Ghostbusters Winston.
That's who I wanted to play Carol Ann for Poltergeist.
That's who I wanted to replace Bradley Whitford too. So we don't get what we want.
No, that's perfect. That was, as soon as you said that you were recasting that character, I was like, that Samuel L. Jackson was the first person that came to mind. He would add a lot more character to the role, I think. Definitely change up the energy of Ghostbusters for sure. So I like that. That's a solid pick. Kyle, you are up now, the second pick here. And again, you cannot pick Chris Hemsworth to play the role of Chris Hemsworth.
I know the rules. Well, since I can't have Sam Jackson, I'm going to get RDJ to play Hadley, the Bradley Whitford role. I think that's a good fit. They have similar sort of snark to them.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, it's hard to cast Robert Downey Jr. and be like, nah, he's not right for that role. I think you could have put him in pretty much any role here. Again, I would have picked him for Carol Ann, but he's off the board now. So no, great choice there. That's what everybody says is Bradley Whitford is a DJ. All right, so I have.
Why am I not missed?
What?
So why am I not missed?
Because she sees you all the time. I don't know who that is, but I'm sure that they see you a lot.
Yes. Hi, my sunny saga. Thanks for watching our nonsense draft. All right. So first role that came to mind for Poltergeist. By the way, I want to say about Poltergeist real quick. I also love this movie, but it is my favorite Halloween Horror Nights house of all time. So absolutely loved the experience there. Yeah,
I'm jealous.
Yeah, it was a fantastic house. There was one cue in the house that stuck out in everyone's mind, and it's Craig T. Nelson's character in the beginning of the house screaming, "You left the bodies and you only moved the headstones." So we heard that on a loop for about 2 months straight. So that was the first role that came to mind. That's the first one I'm going to be drafting here, and I'm going to replace Craig T. Nelson with John Slattery.
Okay.
I like John Slattery a lot. I think he could fill this role. It's a tough role to fill. I mean, Craig T. Nelson was fantastic there, but I think John Slattery is great.
We were re-watching some Veep with my wife and sister-in-law, and he was on a few episodes of that, and I forgot about that. So that was a nice realization.
And so my next pick. This is so.
By the way, sorry, going back to Dewey's thing about Tony and Morgan, we all decided that they need to have a kid named Stark since there's already Tony Stark and Morgan Stark.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
That is
a good idea.
Okay,
are we announcing that? Are we making that official?
I don't think we're making that official. I don't think we have that authority. I would really hate if I did say something accidentally.
I don't think we have that authority nor the information to be sharing.
I can't believe I don't know about.
Okay, so I have my back-to-back picks here. So I'm just going to finish out the couple here. I'm going to cast Diane, and I'm going to make that Michelle Pfeiffer. I think that fits. I think she fits the role there pretty well.
A nice looking couple. I like that choice.
Yeah, John Slattery and Michelle Pfeiffer filling the role of the main couple of Poltergeist. So Kyle, back to you now. You have recasted Hadley from Cabin in the Woods. Who else do you have here?
I'm famous for my my gender swaps. I think I'm going to turn Richard Jenkins Sitterson into Kobe Smulders.
Oh, okay. I expected you to just go Catherine Hahn again, but no, I like that. I like Kobe Smulders in that role. I don't think we've ever drafted Kobe Smulders or Maria Hill, for that matter, for any single draft.
I mean, she's kind of, she obviously can kick butt in action, but she also has a bit of a desk job, so I think she would kind of slide into that role.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, so Kobe Smulders for the role of Sitterson. And then Doobie, we are back to you. You have casted your Winston. We need 2 more Ghostbusters from you.
Okay, so I'm going to do my own gender swap here. Because I'm a very modern person. Bill Murray, hilarious actor, plays a hilarious character. So I'm going to go with a person who I absolutely know is hilarious only because she pops up on my TikTok feed all the time. So I think she has what it takes to pull off the role, and that would be Karen Gillan.
Yeah, as soon as you said TikTok, I immediately started writing her in. So Karen Gillan playing Venkman, correct?
The Bill Murray role, yes, whatever that.
Yeah, we're about to have our Ghostbusters knowledge exposed here in this draft, I think. Yes, Karen Gillan playing the role of Venkman, working off of Samuel L. Jackson's Winston. I'm already buying a ticket for this. To be fair, I don't think you could have possibly messed this draft up for Ghostbusters. I think any combination of MCU actors in those roles would have been a lot of fun. So Samuel L. Jackson, Karen Gillan, which role are you filling next?
Okay, so we're going to do Dan Aykroyd. What's the character, Mac?
I want to say Spangler.
Okay, we're going to do Spangler. Here I'm picking a quality actor. He can do any role in the world, but he a little bit has that look. Kind of tall, long face. I'm going to go Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh, okay.
I thought of him today because we just put up coverage of the new attraction at SeaWorld with the penguin. So
Penguins.
I was hoping that he would narrate that, but I guess he doesn't.
That would be fantastic. I could get into a long National Geographic related story about Benedict Cumberbatch and penguins, but that's a good pick. This is a really interesting dynamic you're building with this team here for these Ghostbusters, so I like it. Kyle, back to you for your third pick. Now you have Dana and Kurt. It's pretty much the two main characters of the movie left to cast here.
Yeah, for Dana, I'm going to go ahead and take Catherine Newton because I need someone younger in the MCU, and she's younger.
Okay, I like it. Catherine Newton has like quickly became one of my favorite actresses with the movie Freaky, and then obviously in Quantumania. So really like her. I also love.
She's got horror movie experience, is what
she does. Yes, exactly.
Blumhouse's own. You can watch Shark Tank tonight to see Jason Blum on.
Yeah.
What a plug by Kyle there. Just a true pro. I like Mike Celestino's comment. Someone said Ghostbusters and it summoned me. So Mike is probably going to shame us for our lack of Ghostbusters knowledge.
He's sitting there drinking his Ecto Cooler watching the show.
Mike is late. I feel like he's going to miss the comment I made to start this. I want to make sure that's out there. That Ghostbusters, along with Back to the Future, one of the most overrated movies there is.
Can't believe you would repeat that on this show. There's no chance. You're going to cut our listenership in half.
Have you watched this week's Loki yet, Doobie?
I have not watched any of Loki.
Okay, well, maybe you'll watch this one because there's a reference to Back to the Future, but there's also a reference to Jurassic Park. So
yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'll just jump right in. Will I be lost at all if I just watch this episode?
It's a time travel show, so you could probably watch in any order. It doesn't matter.
I had a theory that this episode is probably the same backwards and forwards, but I don't think that's true.
Okay, so I am up now with back-to-back picks to finish out my draft, and I think two names that shouldn't be on your radar at all because there's no way they would fill. Well, maybe one of them, but probably a name that you wouldn't have thought of. But I think she fills the role of Tangina very well, and that is MCU's biggest star, and I'm definitely not reading the name off of my phone, Harriet Sansom Harris. Harriet Sansom Harris. So well known that I mispronounced the name. That is Verussa from Werewolf by Night, the sort of gameskeeper, I guess, of the whole situation, the one running the show. I think she fills the role of Tangina, played by Zelda. So I will copy that name over later on because I've already forgotten it. Wow. Not going to help me in the polls, but she is a great actress, and I think fits that role like too perfectly for me to pass up. And I'm definitely not also Googling the name of my last pick here because I don't know it. It is Lexi Rabe, the little girl who played Morgan Stark, because that's what I have to cast with Carol Ann. So, however, I went to her IMDb earlier, and the fact that she is now 11 years old and does not look at all like the little girl who was in that movie, I feel old. It didn't feel good to see that. So thank you for that, Matt, for making me cast.
I'm a little surprised you didn't just, you don't have to remake the movie in the exact same way. Instead of it being their little child, it could have been grandpa. You could have cast Robert Redford to play the role or something.
That's fair. Robert Redford should have been on my board. No, and I did consider changing it because I wanted the delivery of Samuel L. Jackson saying "they're here," probably followed by an expletive after that. I thought that would have been fantastic, but you took him off my board to start things off, so I couldn't pivot there. So,
I'm so sorry now.
That's so I stuck to the formula there.
When we're off the air,
all right, Kyle,
you say
it. That's an off the air kind of thing.
Yeah.
We have Slack for that. Kyle, we are back to you now. You have to fill the Chris Hemsworth role. Where are you going here?
Chris Hemsworth.
Well, first of all, I can't choose him, and second of all, like kind of like with the same thing, I feel like I need to choose someone who's kind of on the younger end, but also kind of has that hunky, but has range and can do these different roles. So I'm going to take Will Poulter.
Oh, I like that. Yes, Will Poulter. Yeah, Adam Warlock.
He's Adam Warlock, but he's also the dorky kid from. He's also British, which who knew that?
Yeah, that's another one. Well, I mean, I think you realize at this point, like 75% of Hollywood is British. Like once you hear them in an interview, it's just wow, I had no idea they were British. But
if you see We're the Millers, you had no clue.
Okay, so Will Poulter rounds out your lineup. I like that. He was not on my radar at all for that. I had another one in mind that we can talk about later on. But all right, Doobie, we are back to you now. Last role for you to cast is Egon. And
Harold Ramis. So to me, I saw this movie in theaters way back when. I don't think I've seen it since, but I feel like Harold Ramis was kind of a little bit more geeky, nerdy of the crew, at least in my head. So I was thinking Paul Bettany, but he's actually kind of cool. His character has a little geek in him, but when you look at him, I'm looking at his picture right now, he's too cool for that. So I'm going to go with Benedict Wong.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's cool. A good kind of twist on things. Also working opposite Benedict Cumberbatch. Obviously, they have some chemistry. So yeah, that's a solid pick. You said Paul Bettany, and I was like, that is as perfect a casting. Like that is just you're carrying him right over from Ghostbusters. But then that was a solid pivot.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot I'm not in charge. I put Mike's comment.
He was assigned.
Yeah,
we each had to choose for each other.
Yeah, for our audio listeners, Mike Celestino commented, "Why on earth did you pick Ghostbusters if you don't like it?" Yeah, Doobie was assigned the movie Ghostbusters by Kyle, and he had to recast the 4 Ghostbusters. So we have finished the draft now. Let me go through our lineups. Doobie, you drafted Benedict Wong as Egon, Karen Gillan as Venkman, Benedict Cumberbatch as Spengler, and Samuel L. Jackson as Winston. Kyle, for the movie Cabin in the Woods, drafted Catherine Newton as Dana, Will Poulter as Kurt, Kobe Smulders as Sitterson, and Robert Downey Jr. as Hadley. And then for the movie of Poltergeist, I have Michelle Pfeiffer as Diane, John Slattery as Steve, Lexi Rabe, I hope I pronounced her name right, as Carol Ann, and then Harriet Sansom Harris as Tangina. Any other names
has been defeated?
Any other names come to mind for you guys, or did you have anybody in mind when you were delivering the movie to somebody else?
Had I been assigned Poltergeist, I would have chosen Scarlett Johansson for Carol Ann because I have to have Scarlett Johansson in my movies.
I'm surprised you didn't make her a Ghostbuster.
She really just didn't work in this one. I wish she was funny. I would have made her Bill Murray's character.
Wow. Shots fired at Scarlett Johansson. Just sitting at home watching Zzzax Live, and now.
Sorry, SJ. My bad.
She would play the Sigourney Weaver role, though, right? To be clear,
had that been one of the characters, absolutely, she would have been the Sigourney Weaver role.
Real quick, who takes the Rick Moranis role?
That is a great question. I'll come back to you on that one.
Okay, Kyle, I will say for you, the only one that I thought of for the role of Kurt, I just thought Sebastian Stan. I kind of just pivoted. What's funny is I haven't watched that movie in a long time. I went and watched the trailer today, and Hemsworth's like accent just feels off in that.
I'll have to watch it. Yeah, for a second I thought about one of my Kyle twists and taking Liam Hemsworth, but
I thought that might have been coming. Rick Moranis. My first thought was Paul Rudd, but
that was my first thought too. Same page there.
Maybe Tom Holland, but one of those two.
Okay, I like that. Mike
Paul Rudd has been in a Ghostbusters movie.
Yes, exactly. He was not in that one, and he was also not that role, so it would have been fair. Mike Celestino says, "Now I'm trying to think of of when Scarlett Johansson has been funny." There was
hilarious with her.
There was I've never seen her, but there was a commercial with her and Colin Jost for either like the Amazon Echo or something like that. That was really funny. So I will give her that.
I know she can be funny. I've seen her be funny.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. She's incredibly talented. All right. Doobie, thank you so much for joining us for our nonsense. Go catch your bus before we make you wait for it here.
Thanks for shifting things around for me. And I would watch the rest of the show, but spoiler alert. So,
well, hey, good news. You can listen on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts later on.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Bye. Roosevelt.
Bye, Doobie.
Who knew that Roosevelt was his Seacrest out?
Doobie is the new Seacrest. We're getting that movement started. All right, now this is weird. I don't know where to go from here. We are finished a draft and we still have half a podcast to talk about here.
I think we're gonna do it all backwards. We're gonna go into the episode and then we'll end with Marvel news. How's that sound?
That sounds good to me. Let's get into our breakdown of Loki season 2, episode 4. The episode title was "The Heart of the TVA," and yeah, I mean, just first thoughts. What did you think of this episode, Kyle?
I thought this was a thrilling episode. I enjoyed it very much. Definitely, I don't know if I'd say there were like major twists. Maybe a couple like little ones.
Mm-hmm.
Almost more of the subversion of a twist. The subversion of the twist was the twist. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed this episode, and I mean, definitely the biggest hook. We talked about last week's being the biggest hook. This was like 10 times that.
Yeah, I think I said last week that like every episode has the biggest hook so far. I think this is going to be one of those episodes where it was great in the moment watching it, the night it came out. I think it's going to, like, looking back on it, it's going to hinge on what happens going forward. There's 2 more episodes left of this season, and they really set us up, like you said, like this huge hook. So
it felt like a penultimate episode.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. It feels like the finale should be. I actually said, as that episode ended, I was like, so glad that was not the finale, because if we had to wait, who knows how long after that. And so, yeah, we do have 2 more episodes to fill out the story here. But yeah, I definitely really like this episode. We start off and I do want to mention, as Kyle put up the banner for us, spoilers for Loki for this episode going forward. If you are watching live, if you're listening, hopefully you already watched the episode, or what are you doing? So let's get into the episode, the specifics here. There will be spoilers as long as that banner is up. We start off this episode right where we left off last week, in the end of time with Miss Minutes and Renslayer. And I did not expect to get the secret that Miss Minutes teased last week, like in the first opening seconds of this week's episode. So yeah, we see that Miss Minutes kind of plays a little. I don't know why it's like such a little hologram. It was really weird the way they delivered that. It's like, here, watch this big secret from your past, but like only on an iPhone 4 screen.
It's like a clip hits of.
I think she just streamed it on Quibi, I think is how she showed her this.
The problem, yeah.
So yeah, we see that the big secret is that Renslayer was the general for He Who Remains. Kind of not a secret for us, right? Like, we knew that she had been working with him. Although, like, at the same time, again, I don't know. Was that clip from the audio clip in the future? Was it in the past? I have no idea.
We're gonna have to just forget that whole thing.
So she finds out that she was the general for He Who Remains. She was commanding his army, and He Who Remains wiped her memory and wiped the memories of everyone at the TVA. So that was big news to her. And then Miss Minutes' whole point was, maybe we don't need him, and we never did. And so basically they've completely turned a corner. They don't want to bring He Who Remains back. They want to reestablish the TVA on their own and basically take his throne, more or less. So
do you think he flashy thingied them?
I love a good Men in Black reference. Not even the first one on this podcast, too. It was drafted in a previous draft.
I did just ride the ride at Universal, so that's probably why it's top of mind.
There you go. Yeah. So yeah, they turn a corner. They're now gunning for Timely and He Who Remains seat as the leader of the TVA. Also, that contentious relationship between the two of them seems to be gone now that they've I feel like there was a rom-com like this where it was like two man, it's gonna kill me. It's pretty sure it's one of my wife's favorite movies too. I'll randomly think of the name later in the podcast and just shout it out at random. But yeah, so they're now going after Timely. One of my favorite moments in this episode, and maybe in the show as a whole, is we get back to the TVA and they convince, Loki and Mobius convince Timely to help them fix the loom. And so that means they have to introduce him to OB. And so all of his life's work has been based on the TVA guidebook written by OB, and OB wrote the TVA guidebook based on He Who Remains work. And so there's this Ouroboros, as you pointed out last week's episode. You explained what Ouroboros was. Yeah, the image of the snake eating its own tail, and OB literally says it's like a snake eating its own tail in this episode. So that was pretty great timing on your part, first of all, to explain Ouroboros last week.
Yeah,
but yeah, just a really cool moment between them.
I had a question about this. Do you think it's possible that this means that OB could be like a variant of Kang?
I don't know. There's this whole season has been just loaded with time paradoxes. The plural of paradox, whatever that may be. Yeah, it's like, and we'll talk about another one
Quadadox
later on. It's not a paradox; it's four of them. So yeah, I'm not sure. There's a paradox at play there, and it's one of those things. Like, if you start thinking about it too much, it wrinkles your brain. So I do think, TVA or OB could get credit with being the creator of the TVA. In which case, is he really the villain here? I have no idea. I don't know what to make of it. It's just stop thinking about it. We then get into, I thought, they just upped the ante as far as just another really, really fun moment. OB breaks out a model to show them as they're creating their solution to fix the loom. And he explains, as you pointed out earlier during the draft, that there was a Back to the Future reference. He explains that this model, he apologized for it being so crude and he didn't have time to build it to scale. Just like Doc Brown says in Back to the Future when he's showing the model of the clock tower and the whole way he's going to get back to the future. That's why they call it that. So yeah, I love that reference that they threw in there. And again, the whole energy of all of these and getting all these characters together was great. It was obviously focused on Timely and OB, but getting everyone in the same room for the first time was a lot of fun too. So really liked this whole, not truly the opening because that was the Renslayer stuff, but this whole sequence between these characters was great. There was also I thought one of the best, and I said this about in Secret Invasion too, but this was one of the best acted scenes we've gotten in the MCU to date. Any project, film, TV, whatever, Loki and Sylvie's discussion about what they should be doing, with the TVA. Sylvie still thinks they should let it burn. And, they created all these branch timelines. Everyone on there should have their free will. And Loki says, you can't just let people have free will and not protect them from any threats. And that's what he wants to do. And basically, Sylvie does kind of come around to the idea, but she says it seems like whatever we do, we're playing God. And then there's this pause. And it was in that where I was like, oh, they are so good right now. They are just working off of each other so perfectly. And did
you
Loki,
call the line? Because Becca knew called.
Oh yeah. It was like, I might have said it out loud. It was one of those, like, I tried to say it under my breath. But I don't know. I'd have to ask my wife if I, interrupted the show at all. But he then says we are gods. And that was just so perfect. Like that whole scene was just so great.
I felt like it was a totally different tone for Loki, the character. Like listening to the way that Tom delivered the lines, I could see a different version of Loki, like being angry, like faster, angrier, louder. And this was just so like
faster.
Yeah. Just like caught, like just totally like still the character, but just different than what we've seen before. And I said the same thing about, like, I enjoyed seeing him in like full detective mode when him and Mobius kind of spring into action. And this kind of felt the same way, just like having a calm conversation is not what we usually get from him. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and he even set it up perfectly in this scene where he talks about the events of the movie Thor, where Thor goes back to Earth. He comes back, as Sylvie would say, softer, not as willing to kill. and that's what we've seen with
Loki.
Loki.
Dumb and funny.
Yes. I mean, Thor's character arc over those movies, forget about it. But yeah, that's what we're seeing in a shorter time span with Loki here, is the character is completely morphed. And I think him working with Sylvie has forced him into that role too, because she is so still Loki-like, right? Like she's so hot-headed and ready to just jump in and, stab first and ask questions later. So yeah, I think these two characters playing off of each other is just so perfect. And yeah, this is just one of my favorite scenes in the MCU, I think. We have to talk about, I've mentioned a few quotes in this episode. One of my favorite quotes has come from you, actually, in your response to the episode, because we have to talk about what Renslayer and Miss Minutes do to General Dox and her Minutemen. They find them in a holding cell, and they call back to a couple episodes ago. They bring out that machine that forms a box around people and just kind of squishes them, which the more they use that and the more I think about it, I think this show is going to make me claustrophobic. I don't know if that's possible, but man, that is nightmarish. And the thing we have to talk about is Miss Minutes' face during that entire sequence. And I watch the episode, I go to Slack, and I see I have one message from you just saying, Miss Minutes is a psychopath. And yeah, absolutely. And that was our reaction to it. But in a way that we laughed at it. It was horrifying, but so funny.
Well, because at first you think that they're just gonna kind of leave it in the background, just her being with just big wide eyes and shaking her face, go, go, go. But then they not close up on it, but tighter, and so you can't miss it, and you're just oh my god.
Yeah, and so it was a really weird wow, this is horrifying, but also really funny because Miss Minutes is just so off the wall in this season.
It's something so disturbing that they won't actually show us what's happening, and Miss Minutes is just
yeah. Right. Yeah, they won't show us what's happening, but man, did they let us hear it. They include every gruesome little sound in there, and then also cut to sort of the pain on X5's face as he decided to join Renslayer as opposed to become a victim of that boss.
It was a soft committal, but yeah, I guess it counted, and then he made the most of it.
Yeah, he never really said, yeah, I'll join you. He just kind of stood closer to her than the rest of them did. And I think she took that as, okay, you're in. So yeah, there was
take what you can get.
Right. Yeah. Which we'll talk about X5 a little bit later, because he played a pretty key role in this whole story. What did Victor Timely do to the hot cocoa machine?
I don't know. But I don't know why it says chocolate soup. I wondered this from the beginning. The first time we saw the machine, I was like, chocolate soup. And then when he talked about hot cocoa, I'm like, okay, he means that. And yeah, it says chocolate soup.
Oh, I have to go back and look at that now. That's more horrifying than the box. I think that might have just ruined hot cocoa for me. I don't want chocolate soup. That sounds
I get that he's kind of fascinated by the machine, but offering it to the dude, it was just kind of a weird scene. I don't know if I'm supposed to make something of it or not.
I know. That's the thing. I keep overthinking stuff in this show and then having to back out and being well, that's just too complicated to even think about.
Now marshmallows. Marshmallows are in Ghostbusters. It was another reference.
Yeah, I don't know what I was supposed to make of that. I will say again, though, and here I think is as good a time as any, that he's just been fantastic in this show. Just so good once again in this role. But yeah, super weird with the hot cocoa stuff. And then he works on the machine and somehow improves the hot cocoa to the point where the guard is like, oh yeah, this is way better. What did you do? I need the secrets. I need, a Disney park, Avengers Campus has to have Timely's hot cocoa at some point. It has to be the best hot cocoa I've ever had in my life.
They'll be late to that because it won't be timely. But...
And that's all the time we have, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we mentioned the Back to the Future reference. We have to get into the Jurassic Park reference. Early.
Going back, X5 prunes the guy while he's drinking his cocoa, and dramatic dropping of the cocoa.
Yeah, just really leaning on the hot cocoa stuff. It was just so weird.
There's gotta be meaning to it, Mac. Why haven't you told me what it is yet?
I'm gonna be all over websites and just scanning Marvel Unlimited for appearances by hot cocoa in the Marvel universe now. So
or great. Chocolate soup. You gotta check the alternate.
That's right. I should check for.
Turns out there was a character in the 70s named Chocolate Soup.
Wouldn't be the most surprising character, which is the sad thing. Yeah, so Timely then becomes the prisoner of X5 and eventually Renslayer and Miss Minutes. We get the Jurassic Park reference that you alluded to earlier, that Miss Minutes has been hacking or taking over the TVA system and locking everybody out. And so obviously they're trying to get into their temp pads or whatever, whatever else. And of course she pops up and goes, changes it up a little bit. She doesn't say, you didn't say the magic word. She says access denied. So not just a complete rip of the line. It would have been just great if they just cut to just Nedry just on the screen doing it, not even Miss Minutes. But yeah, so I love somebody that worked on this episode in particular has to be a big fan of classic Universal.
They were probably like a tour guide at the park or something.
Are you saying Jeremiah worked on this episode? He didn't tell me anything. So yeah, so two interesting references thrown into this. I mentioned the time paradox earlier, and I said we would have another one coming, and that happens with Loki himself. As they're scrambling, they find out Renslayer's there. They got to go save Timely. They're dealing with trying to get Miss Minutes out of the system, and so Loki the TVA is melting down too. Loki goes into action. He grabs a time stick and runs off, and we see Loki, looking around at what's going on, but we realize there's something off about this Loki. Then we see the other Loki. And you notice, okay, this is the moment that he had that time slip of in the season premiere. By the way, good luck to anybody who reads my episode recap, because writing this out, explaining what was happening in this scene just in writing was impossible. So hopefully you watched the episode before reading the recap.
Well, I'll say this is the part where when we see episode 1 Loki and then episode 4 Loki, you're like, oh, okay, so we're meant to think that Loki did prune the other Loki. Mm-hmm. But then for a second, I'm like, oh, or maybe they want us to think that, and it's really going to be Brad that pruned episode 1 Loki, thinking it was episode 4 Loki. So he didn't do it to help him. He did it to kill him, but he got the wrong Loki.
Okay.
But then it was actually just Loki.
Yeah. So we see, we watch
Back to the Future with BS.
Die Hard? No, that's not one. We see episode 1 Loki go, as I should mention too, Sylvie was trapped in an elevator and that separated her from episode 4 Loki. It's even harder to describe in words, like just talking about it. So then episode 1 Loki sees Sylvie, prying her way out of the elevator like we saw in episode 1. Also with the phone, the random hallway phone ringing, just constantly the entire time. And then episode 4 Loki sees this happening and he realizes, oh, I got pruned here and that saved me. I need to go prune me so that I could eventually be here to prune me. And it's a whole time loop / paradox. What would have happened if he didn't prune himself, but not
It's
himself?
A snake eating its own tail. It's the same thing as the OB inspired Timely, who inspired OB, who...
Right. Yeah. So interesting twist on that there. That we, again, season or episode 1.
Somehow we got Johnny Be Good out of it. That's all I know.
Episode 1, I thought, it's got to be Renslayer that pruned him, right? And no, it turns out it was him that pruned him. I
did enjoy in your recap the way you said himself,
but not himself. Yeah. So Sylvie comes out and wondering what is going on, what just happened. And Loki says, "Don't worry, it'll make sense later." I don't think he's ever.
I think he said he promised it would make sense later.
Yeah. So I want a post-credit scene where it's just him explaining to Sylvie what happened in that moment. But yeah, so they finish that nonsense and then notice the phone is still ringing. They let the phone ring way too long, like to the point where as he's like hovering his hand over the phone, I was like, if they let this ring one more time, I might fast forward because it's just going on too long. But he finally answers. It's this big dramatic moment. And then it's just OB on the other line, just asking what's taking so long. Feels like there's a lot of that, like these dramatic, but then kind of just not like it's not actually a big moment.
Fake outs.
Yeah.
You like horror movies. You know about the fake out jump scare.
Yeah, but then there's usually a jump scare to follow that, and there's
not immediately.
Fair. Sometimes,
but not immediately. Like I know the first 20 minutes horror movie, and then there's always a cat.
There's always a cat. There is always a cat. You're not wrong. OB explains that he can get Miss Minutes out of the system.
Throwing it.
We needed a community reference at some point. OB points out that he can get Miss Minutes out of the system by rebooting the whole system, but that's going to turn off all of their security systems, which would then allow people to use magic in the TVA.
I like how he specifically mentions that.
Yeah, there's got to be other things, right? But that's the thing, yeah. To which Loki and Sylvie are immediately like, yeah, shut it down. This would have been helpful a long time ago. So that allows them to sneak up on, well, they cut the power, and Miss Minutes disappears. Loki and Sylvie sneak up on X5. Sylvie enchants him, and then that allows them to cause a distraction so they can save Timely. And X5, the enchanted X5, which makes him sound like a completely different, like magical character. But no, X5 being enchanted by Sylvie prunes Renslayer, which that to me was a moment of like, whoa, I did not expect that to happen. I guess, are we going to get a Renslayer episode where she's caught in the void and has to fight her way out? What does the void look like now that they've destroyed Alioth? So I'm curious to see if we get back into there. But yeah, so that is how we get to the big finale here. We also
get to see older Miss Minutes where she's just a clock. That was
yes, like the original, like she gets into like an 8-bit sort of thing, and then it's like a not even like just a digital clock, more or less. So yeah, that was cool. But we get to this big finale piece where they have Timely finally at the loom. They use his temporal aura to get into the system, open the blast doors, and get out and install whatever whatever device they've developed throughout this episode. And Timely says, he should be the one to go out there into the radiation, do this dangerous mission. He knows how the device works if something goes wrong. So they allow him to do it.
No crack in the helmet.
No crack in the helmet. I did notice that. They gave him a nicer suit. Mobius did not get the nice suit. So they saved the good stuff for Timely. But he gets out there into that radiation and is immediately just eviscerated, just disappears.
So here's the thing. We've seen this style of effect at least 3 times that I can think of. So the first one we have, it's a little different, but in Multiverse of Madness.
That was the one that came for me.
Yeah, that happened. He turns into a pull and peel.
Yeah.
Then in Quantumania, the Ant-Man similar thing, and then this. So I wonder if there's some sort of connection there to getting pull and peeled.
Yeah, well, I thought of the Quantumania one, and that makes it like there's connection there, right? Like it's kind of the same radiation they'd be dealing with. Wanda's powers would be very different, so I'm not sure why that would have the same effect, but who knows? The visual gave me the idea that Timely's not being killed there. Instead, what's happening is he's being split, and he is being thrown out into each timeline, creating the many variants of Kang. In which case, Loki and Mobius and the TVA just created He Who Remains, who then goes on to create the TVA. And again, yes, exactly, so kind of filling that theme. And so, and also, the idea that you are creating your biggest enemy. So that's my thought. I don't know. I mean, what happens after may have some effect on that because it's this dramatic moment. Timely's gone. There's nothing they can do to stop what's about to come. The radiation just kind of pounds in on the TVA. The light flashes, and then everything just goes black. And that's the end of this episode. Like we mentioned at the top, like this was a pretty shocking ending that gave us a pretty big hook. Like obviously, like I want the next episode right now. I don't know. What did you think? How did you feel about that ending?
There were a few different ways I took it. Like you mentioned, it kind of had. Well, I'll let you say it yourself, but I'm like, okay, there's the sacred timeline, there's branches. Loki having to prune himself is interesting. So that must be a branch. So if you kill the branch, could we go back to the sacred and like kind of relaunch things that way?
Yeah.
Or is this not really actually killing the TVA? Is it just kind of expanding like they wanted to do in the first place to encompass more branches. So maybe this is, while it looks bad, maybe it's not actually a bad thing.
It's true. Yeah, they said they don't know what will happen really. So, yeah, this could just be their solution more or less.
But for some reason, I heard "Don't Stop Believin'" during the credits, and I don't know why that happened.
It did feel Sopranos-esque, although as you brought that up, you brought that up after the episode, and I mentioned, yeah, the difference though is that we have to wait a week to get the continuation of the story, not that being the absolute end of the story and never revisiting it again. Unless
Emily was trying to park a car for like a half hour.
I don't know if one of the movies revisited it. I'm not sure if those were prequels or what, but
I think it was a prequel.
Okay. So yeah, we do get a continuation of the story.
But that did mean I will say, spoilers for The Sopranos if you haven't seen that 20 years ago.
Hey, it was spoiled for Wong. Okay.
It's pretty clear that meant that Tony died. Tony Soprano is dead at the end of Sopranos. Not Tony Stark.
I was like, wait, well, how does
Tony
this impact
Betty.
Tony Stark?
But Tony Soprano was dead.
Yeah.
That was what he said. It cuts to black. So if they are going by that logic, then that does mean that everybody at the TVA is dead, or at least Loki.
Well, this would be a good time to tell you I've never watched The Sopranos.
Okay, well.
But yeah, so never before have I wanted a post-credit scene so badly. I was really hoping for just anything. I didn't even care what it was. Just give me something more after that.
And this is the first time we were casting to the TV that we have here. And so I didn't even get the little cue where the credits go small to let me know there's not going to be anything. So I held on like, ooh. But then we got to like, the foreign credits and I was like, oh, okay. It's like,
yeah. It actually, even without casting, it did kind of give you some of those normal credits for a little bit before it then cut to that small screen. So I was like, wait a minute, are we getting something here just later than normal? But no, they kind of teased it a little bit. But yeah, I love the ending. I love the ending for a fourth episode. Again, if this was a finale, I would have been devastated. But yeah, I need to know what happens, going forward to really judge this episode looking back at it. But yeah, and you mentioned too, I said in my recap, and I said this after the second episode when Docs destroyed all those branch timelines, it felt a lot like the death of the Marvel Universe, a thing they did in the Secret Wars story arc in 2015 in the comics. The story arc that is going to be adapted for a future movie. So this felt more like that because in the comics, as much as you can possibly do this effect in the comics, it was like a flash of light and then just a white page that said Marvel Universe, and then it had the years, and Death of the Marvel Universe 2015, something like that. So this felt a lot like that. And I'm curious to see where they go. Like, how do you start? If you were to guess, where does the next episode open? What do you think?
2008.
Ooh, I like that. That would be a cool idea. It just opens with the opening scene from Iron Man. Just Tony and the Humvee.
Yeah, just in the Fun V.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Death of the Marvel Universe, the point of it, as I understand in 2015, was to kind of get back to a core. And if, it feels a little early, I feel like there could be more of a battle, but to ultimately get back down to a sacred timeline for the MCU is actually kind of interesting.
Yeah, and that I should mention too, that event happens at the beginning of Secret Wars. So that could be sort of the kickoff to everything. But we do have, we have Kang Dynasty and several other things to go before Secret Wars still. So yeah, who knows? But
I did think, going back, I know it's not because this was filmed before, but the part at the beginning where Miss Minute says, he thinks we need him, but we really don't. I was like, oh yeah, it's
that could be taken that way for sure. No, I like your idea better now for where next week's episode starts. But my first thought was we open with Renslayer in the Void. I think they kind of pull away from that main story and they give us her story, maybe for the entire episode. I don't know. We'll see.
That makes sense because we did say it feels like a penultimate. So if you take a detour for the penultimate and then go back, then that's essentially the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else on Loki before we wrap up our discussion and get into a little, just a brief touch on news here? There wasn't a whole lot to talk about.
No, I think I'm good, ready to watch next week's episode.
Yeah.
At home, actual home.
Just in time for you to start preparing to move again, but
got a long time to do that.
All right, so I'm going to take the banner down. Oh, Kyle took the banner down. No more Loki spoilers. So let's touch on a few little pieces of news before we wrap things up here today. I think the biggest story was probably some details on Agatha now Darkhold Diaries.
Sort of details, and they're like, "Oh, new logo." I'm like, "Wow, it's the old logo," but
they just changed the name. Yeah,
yeah. I think people photoshopped that immediately, but
okay. right. Well, no, we did get in like a sort of an episode description, more or less, and I'll just read this off for you real quick. In the first
Agatha makes a Marga wrong, and just gonna stick with that joke.
Works every week. In the first episode, we see Agatha Harkness. This is the description, by the way. It literally starts with "in the first episode." We see Agatha Harkness finally break out of a spell she has been trapped in. She can't wait to go back to her old murderous ways. I love that description. Only to find she is powerless. The only way forward for her is to embark on a perilous quest to get her powers back with the help of an unlikely friend or two. So there you go. We not a whole lot of new information, but kind of gives us the idea. We weren't sure. Yeah, that's possible. We weren't sure even like where in the timeline this show was going to take place. We had some ideas based on casting and stuff, but now we know this is going to be picking up right after WandaVision. So I like that. I'm excited to see some of the returning cast, but
maybe
also
not right after WandaVision, because it says that she's been in a spell for a while. But yes,
yeah, that's true. But yeah, we are going to get some exciting new cast members that Aubrey Plaza, as you alluded to. So a lot, and there's also the rumors of the Hood having a role to play in this show, which I would be really excited about. A Marvel Comics villain, who's a really cool character. So we're looking forward to that.
I thought I was just behind on rappers' names.
Well, that's also probably true. But yeah, so Agatha Darkhold Diaries, I believe still set for next year, but why even pay attention to the schedule at this point right now? A few other pieces of news. First, Marvel and Magic the Gathering are coming together, where it seems like a match that like this should have existed already, right? Like it just assumed that it was a thing.
But I'm also a little disappointed because it probably means that there's not going to be any Marvel characters in Disney Lorcana.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's probably makes sense. But I was thinking, so Ravensburger is the company that does Lorcana.
Is it Ravensburger? I've been saying Ravensburger all this time.
Okay, so here's the thing. I went to Gen Con. Nobody says it the same way, including their employees and the founder of the company.
Okay, got it.
It's German. That's all we know.
So Ravensburger it is. Got it.
So Ravensburger also does Villainous, and so there's a core Disney game for that, but then there's also a Star Wars one and a Marvel one. So I guess instead of having Marvel characters in a Disney Lorcana, I was kind of thinking maybe they do like a Marvel Lorcana or style game that maybe could come. But anyway, that seems off the table if they're doing something with Wizards of the Coast. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I would think that's off the table, but you never know. I mean, I guess Disney could have negotiated
licenses lapse.
Yeah, that's true too. Are you familiar with Magic the Gathering? Do you ever play it?
Play is strong. Have 3 cards in elementary school and pretend I knew how to play. Sure. Yeah.
So you had 3 cards?
Not 3. I don't know. I had like a few. I don't even remember buying them. So I don't know where I acquired them from. Maybe I just sat down with a friend who had some. But yes, no, I'm familiar with it in concept, but never actually played.
Okay. I was going to say, I've never played the game. I don't know the rules, but I'm pretty sure you can't play with just 3 cards. So
I mean, you can, but you lose very quickly.
I will say this might get me into it. I might be interested in checking this out. If for nothing else, but the art alone, like you mentioned with Disney Lorcana, the art of the cards is really, really nice. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if I don't know Magic well enough to know if this is going to be blended into, like, do I need to know the rest of the lore of the entire franchise, or is this going to be its own thing, like a full David S. Pumpkins? I'm not sure. If it is its own thing, I might be interested.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I feel like it would have to be an offshoot, because otherwise you're bringing IP into a very, very established lore. This, I say this not knowing whether that's a thing that already exists. Yeah, I don't know. I learned a little tiny bit at Gen Con hearing from people, and the consensus that I heard was, Magic had its time. Well, maybe Magic I think is still okay, but they were talking about other games that kind of get ruined, like Yu-Gi-Oh, where it's accessible at first, but then when they keep adding on to it and they keep making rarer and rarer cards, then at some point you have to basically be rich and spend all your money on cards to even be able to compete in a game. So I don't think, well, I know the Magic has all sorts of other issues going on right now. And D&D and I think Wizards is owned by Hasbro now, and so I know there's some like longtime players that aren't exactly happy with the direction the game has gone. So I don't know how they feel about this either.
Interesting. That's a whole, like, we could do a whole podcast on that. I think that's
if I had any interest or insight. Yeah.
If we got somebody more knowledgeable, that's a fascinating topic I would love to get into, but don't have time for that today, nor the knowledge for that today. Couple things hit Disney Plus today, neither of which you've had the chance to watch. I got to watch one of the two. So I'll just start off by saying Werewolf by Night in color is now streaming on Disney Plus. I do plan to watch it. If for nothing else, other than I wanted to watch Werewolf by Night, around Halloween anyway. So I was planning on it. Now it's in color. So I'll probably check that out. Well, I'm sure we'll have some thoughts to share on it at some point. But I did get the chance to watch and review, which you can check out on laughingplace.com right now, Lego Marvel Avengers Code Red. I will admit, I really like the
watched it in the best setting, right? You were in like a movie theater or
yep, that's exactly what. Definitely not watching it on my iPhone in my broken down car in a parking garage somewhere. Yeah, no, that is so it was a weird experience, but I did actually really enjoy it. I will say I've liked I love the Lego movies. I've watched a few of the specials, like the Star Wars specials and things like that. Really, I love the humor. Like they do a really good job of making these really funny. And this is no different. It's great. I think any Marvel fan of any age can enjoy it. It's definitely geared towards a younger audience. Like there's some of those jokes in there that are like, okay, yes, you are doing that for the kids, but there's a lot of stuff in there that everybody's going to find funny. I laughed out loud multiple times. There's also plenty of stuff for Marvel fans. Like there's little references. There's a ton of characters in it. So it's a really cool, it's new content, great new content for Marvel fans who are looking for something to watch in between episodes of Loki. What do you think? Is that something? Are you going to check it out?
Yeah, I think I will. I have watched I don't know if I watched the last Star Wars one. I've watched two of them. The Christmas one was the first one, I believe, and it was just okay. They said tip yip like 5 too many times. The second one I remember liking more. But obviously I'm a bigger Marvel fan than I am Star Wars. So yeah, I'll check it out. It's not going to be a priority though.
That's fair. I think, again, for our age group, I think that is where it fits in. I think if you have children that are interested in Marvel, they're going to absolutely love it. They'll be glued to the screen, as much as a young child is glued to the screen before running around and screaming. So yeah, I enjoy it. Definitely recommend it. That is it. That's it for us. Chaotic episode, doing everything backwards, time slipping all over the place. If I wanted to, I could edit this to put it in the right order for the audio listeners, but I'm not going to to do that.
Not the day for that. Your efforts are better used elsewhere, believe it or not.
you guys, anyone that listens to this podcast listens for the nonsense anyway. So I'll leave that as it is. What else? What do we have going on, Kyle? Anything we need to set up before we wrap things up here?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Be sure to check out laughingplace.com for all of your stuff. Like I said, I'll be in Kansas City on the 1st for something. And yeah, I don't know why it's a thing, but I'll be there.
Well, and to be clear, you are just stalking Taylor Swift, right? That's what you're doing in Kansas City?
I don't know if she's going to be in Kansas City that day. It's a random Wednesday.
Yeah, I can't imagine she would be.
1989, Taylor's version's now out. I prefer Ryan Adams's version, but you do you.
That's what we need to do. We need to be plugging Taylor Swift stuff. How is she going to...
I mean, that's what Nat Geo is doing. So that's the next thing you have to write, probably.
Okay, sounds good. Well, yeah, thank you. Like Kyle said, check out laughingplace.com for all your latest Disney news and Marvel news. And we will be back next week to break down a very highly anticipated 5th episode of Loki season 2. Until then, bye everyone. No, bye.
Bye.
No.